Have you ever avoided trouble by not saying anything when you were questioned by your parents or teachers in your childhood? You stole money from your parents' wallet after eating snacks and skipping school? Even with 99% confidence, without the truth directly from the person, it's not 100%. Many subtitles are due to this, so please understand. Yes. This is an overview of the Jomar murder case. On January 10th, 1984, a 9-year-old boy in Toyohira Ward, Sapporo City, Hokkaido. Jomar's whereabouts are unknown, his family is wealthy. The possibility of a lure targeting the Amanita mushroom was also considered, but there was no phone call requesting the Amanita mushroom, so a public investigation was conducted. That being said, Jomar was nowhere to be found. About 3 years later, in December 1986, a former hostess who lived near the scene at the time of the incident broke in. Half a year after the previous house caught fire, human bones were found from the burnt ruins. At the time, it was not possible to prove that these remains were those of Jomar, and he was eventually released due to insufficient evidence. However, in December 1998, using the latest scientific technology, it was determined that the human bones were indeed Jomar's. It took 14 years and 10 months from the time of the incident until the case was established, with only 2 months remaining. The police arrested him in a timely manner, but he was later acquitted and the case was closed. Why was he acquitted? Let's pursue the details of the day of the crime, especially the identity of the woman mentioned. First, let's start with the details of the day of the crime. We lost track of Jomar at 9:30 ante meridiem on January 10th, 1984. The phone at Jomar's house rang, and it was Jomar who answered this call. Jomar who answered the phone was fine in front of his family. He was talking to the person on the other end of the line, and it didn't seem like he was talking to a friend, but rather like he was being scolded by someone older. His family said that when the call ended, Jomar said he was going out for a bit. When his mother asked where he was going, he said he was going to the Watanabe's house. His mother, who thought his way of speaking was strange, asked Jomar's older brother to follow him. The brother did as his mother asked and followed Jomar, but lost sight of him when Jomar turned left at an intersection where there was an apartment called Nikyuso. The worried brother searched the area and found a single-family house with the nameplate Watanabe on the gate of Nikyuso. The brother waited there for a while, but because Jomar did not come out, he returned home once to contact his mother. After that, he went to Watanabe's house with his mother. When Mr. Watanabe rings the chime of the house, a high school girl said no such child had come and she knew nothing about the call. The mother and brother immediately searched the area but couldn't find him. At 12:30 post-meridian, we went to the police station and requested a search. The police began the search, questioned the surroundings, and we quickly received a sighting report. Living on the second floor of Nikyuso, his girlfriend, a former hostess, went out to get some fresh air in the late morning of this day and returned to the apartment in about 5 minutes. An elementary-aged boy came to her room asking about the Watanabe family. She said she didn't know them in the neighborhood. The boy said, "I see," and left, so she returned to her apartment. The police also questioned the Watanabe family, but the high school girl who was there gave the same explanation, and even though they searched the house voluntarily, they found nothing related to Mr. Shiromaru. The eyewitnesses were of course investigated. There was information that Mr. Shiromaru, who was seen as an important reference person because he was seen going up to the apartment of Niryuso, was questioned, but unfortunately no strong evidence was obtained. The police continued their investigation, but in the end, it concluded in a form of loss. Until 3 months prior to his disappearance, Mr. Jomaru lived with his nearly 2-year-old daughter while working as a hostess in Susukino. At this point, she was divorced from her ex-husband and was far from being well off. She got caught up in pachinko, racking up a debt of over 10 million yen from the start. That's the reckless part. The night Mr. Jomaru went missing, she was seen carrying a large cardboard box on a dolly and loading it into a car. 3 weeks later, she relocated to another apartment in a new ward and applied for livelihood protection. She remarried and moved into her new spouse's home. She got hooked on pachinko and spent her husband's 20 million yen. Suddenly, she was found in the yard of her previous home where she had been lying for a long time, turning black and emitting a strange smell. She was found to have been burning something that caused smoke about a year after she remarried. The opponent's house suddenly caught fire, and it was found that her deceased husband had a 19 million yen insurance policy. Shortly before the accident, the husband expressed concerns about his health to his family, fearing it might lead to his death. The shipment was made at 3 in the morning. Kei and his daughter had changed into their going out clothes and even their boots were properly put on. I wonder why. Instead of calling 119 from home, they rang the doorbell of the second closest house, 328 yards away. Despite the urgency, they waited for the resident, explained the situation, and had them call 119 and handle the bank book and life insurance documents. Kay and his daughter's suitcases were placed in front of the house's charred remnants after everything was removed. Why is that? There was absolutely nothing left of her deceased husband's belongings. It's too suspicious, isn't it? Jomar was temporarily detained by the police, while Kay was investigated for suspected insurance murder. The insurance company refused to pay out but found no evidence of arson. Ultimately, no arrests were made. After that, Kay sues the insurance company but quickly drops the lawsuit and sells the land. About 6 months after the fire, Jomar's whereabouts became unknown. One day, 4 years later, a family cleaning up the burnt remains of the house discovered a vinyl bag on top of a pile of rubble. It had turned brown and was clearly some kind of bone. The family, who had suspected from the start, thought that this might be another murder and reported it to the police. It was then that the family first learned that they were marked as suspects in Jomar's disappearance. The police arrested him and questioned him about the situation. With the forensic technology available at the time, it was impossible to confirm the identity from the burnt human bones in this case. As a result, they were unable to prove that the bones belonged to Jomaru, and he was ultimately released. Time passed from then on. 10 years later, in October 1998, using the latest forensic technology, it was determined that these bones did indeed belong to Jomaru. This was a dramatic turn of events after 14 years. Jomaru's parents, who were confronted with this, were speechless. The police finally arrested him on suspicion of murder. At that time, the statute of limitations for murder was 15 years, so it was actually time barred. It was just 2 months before the establishment of the statute. On December 7th, the police will indict him for murder. Crimes such as corpse abandonment, corpse mutilation, obstruction of death, negligent homicide, etc., crimes other than murder. There was a possibility of being questioned, but the case has already been established for crimes other than murder. In order to be guilty of murder, it had to be publicly proven that he killed Jomar with intent to kill. Murder is legally defined as killing a person with intent, even if the killing was accidental. Killing by mistake would be manslaughter, while causing injury resulting in death would be charged as such. The charges for both were previously established. The police lured out Jomar to steal white gold. On the day of the incident, a police officer came to investigate. Jomar refused the request for gold, killed the person, put the body in a box, and took it somewhere unexpected and burned it. He confessed, but the cause of death and murder method were unknown, so the case couldn't proceed. After such a long time had passed, it was determined that Mashitatsu Zumari had killed Jomar, but there was no way to prove whether he had killed him with intent to kill other than his own confession. When I take any arbitrary situation, I will solve the case. It had a big impact on my life. I was thinking of such things, but when I was arrested, I lost the first point. I can't answer that. After the second half started, I answered the prosecutor's questions hundreds of times like this, and then, 3 years after the first public trial on May 30th, 2001, a decision was finally made on the punishment. The judge declared him not guilty. Due to some actions of the defendant's actions, including causing Mr. Shiromaru's death, keeping his body for an extended time, retrieving his burned remains, and exhibiting suspicious behavior during voluntary questioning, clearly indicate the defendant's involvement in a serious crime. There is strong suspicion that the defendant caused the death of Mr. Shiromaru, but there is still reasonable doubt that the defendant had the intent to kill Mr. Shiromaru. This is the judgment. The prosecution appealed, but the Sapporo High Court dismissed it, as mentioned earlier. As a confession was needed to reverse the decision, the prosecution abandoned the appeal, confirming the innocence. And unfortunately, the suspicion of a gold murder case also remains unresolved without finding the cause. And the case was established in 2002, and this sentence was detained for 928 days afterwards. And a lawsuit requesting a total of 116 million yen for daily and lawyer fees was filed, which is completely legitimate under the law since it was acquitted and therefore requested. 80% of the 930 million yen was paid to the sentence. The only thing understood afterwards was that there should only be a daughter. He bought a machine for a boy, and it was just that he was joining hands every day. Of course, the victim's family has no income at all. The incident's conclusion greatly confused the public. This time there is no intention to discuss about the law or the victim's experience, it is just that such an incident occurred. Currently, there are no charges related to murder. Thank you for watching.